Ben Stone, your trails coordinator out here in Pacific Highlands Ranch, looking at a trail we built about 3 or 4 seasons ago. It was a season with a lot of rain, and it was built with a machine, and you can kind of see it's narrowed up really nicely. This is kind of what we're looking for to see, is this growth come back in on this outer edge, and then some growth starting to push in from there. And you can see that we have a trail width of maybe about 24 inches, even though we moved about a 3.5 foot machine through here. So, you know, what we do is we just kind of set these things up for this outside upslope side to grow in really well, have an opportunity to grow in, and the outslope to do the same. So this is a bit of a unique area. This kind of had a lot of soil challenges. But this specific little area here is a little slow to grow. But you can see here, you know, even though we probably built 3 foot tread, we've grown back into about 2 feet, or even narrower in some spots. So this is a little section through a fill slope. They've done a much better job getting it revegetated now. As you can tell, this collapsed about 4 years ago. Same time we were building it. This whole fill slope and fill slopes all around this project kind of collapsed down, and even just kind of slid all the way down there. You can see to that netting. But it's held up really well now, and they have it revegetated, so that seems to be holding the dirt together. It sort of descends here into this little canyon. Interesting fact, this must have been an old homeless encampment when we came through here. Found tons of trash, and it's still kind of coming up. But actually, while I was lifting some of that trash and trying to pile it up for the crews that were going to come and remove it, some of that trash was full of a giant bee's nest. And when I picked up the whole bee's nest and dropped it, just bees flew out like crazy, and I had to run for my life. Pretty good time. But you can see I have a really nice trail width here. You know, some of the edge fell off, and it's growing back in now, and this back slope has an opportunity to grow. It's a little steep in a couple spots, but we've narrowed up to about 2.5 feet, and down to 2 feet over here. So exactly what we want to see, but you know, nothing grows quickly here, so it does take some time for these trails to narrow back up after we bring a machine through them. But you can see really nice width, experience here, narrow and nature-based. Keeping on with this tour here, this is a really nice little section. You can see manufactured a grade reversal right here before it descends down into this creek. Ironically, there was another really large bee's nest down in this creek as well. All were humanely removed and relocated. Kind of see it's really narrowed up nicely. The only thing that does grow fast down here are the invasive weeds. And then kind of see this little section of trail coming down from here to here. So, you know, narrowing up really nicely, 1.5 feet, 2 feet through some of this, you know, so it just shows you, given time, things start growing back in. You know, that back slope kind of covers some of the trails, it sloughs off. Really a cobbly area altogether with a lot of poor soil types, clay, sandstone. You know, it's interesting because I get a question super often, like, why didn't I build maybe a more technical trail? Well, to just kind of show you what the original plan was, there's a service road that descends down and then dead ends into a catch basin at the bottom of this canyon. I can show you the catch basin down here, and this is Del Mar Country Club. So you can see there's actually the remnants of an old roadbed here. So I think the original plan basically called for utilizing this old roadbed and jaggedly with some switchbacks zigzagging down to that service road and then taking that service road up. And so you know, and I think it was called out as like 6 or 8 feet wide. So basically what we were able to do is work with the developer and city staff to realign the trail, being able to utilize some of the credits from reducing the width to make the trail longer, and in turn make it into a single track. But, you know, the trail was planned very specifically as being consistent with the City of San Diego Trail guidelines. So that was actually what we kind of used to apply that pressure, right? As we said, hey, city trail guidelines say you can't exceed this and that, and you can't do this. And this trail is basically designed to not be within those guidelines. And that was the leverage we used to redesign this and not make it into another service road. That was really a terrible experience for everyone. And a couple more fun historical facts here. One was people, for some reason, an engineer was sure that I'd have trouble cutting across the slope and keeping a trail here, and it's held up really well. I mean, parts of it have eroded a little bit, but 4 years in, and this trail took 10 inches in 1 week once. Held up really well. Again, the back slope is kind of sloughed in. The outside is kind of growing in a little bit, sloughed off, reduced that width. Got stuck in that spot. There was some water pushing its way up from the ground, and it made that area oversaturated. I think I was stuck there for about 2 or 3 weeks without being able to move the machine. It was a really moisture-rich winter. So I'm just kind of remembering some stuff from my pre-construction meetings. You know, one of the other ideas they had is they were like, well, there's this other great road here. And they were like, why don't you utilize this old historic road here to connect up? So come from the service road all the way down to this catch basin, and then just use this old road, this old ranch road, to connect up to here. And I mean, you can just see it. It's a trench. It's destroyed, you know. So, you know, these are the sorts of weird conversations we have. And what we got instead was a pretty cool narrow trail here, kind of meanders up and around. Some great views. Another little cool spot to highlight on the trail. This must be an old ranch road of some sort that used to go up to this mesa when this was all farmland. Kind of see the outline of it there, and it went all the way down there. And so when we came through here, there was a big trench there, and this is all pretty flat terrain as we come around the mesa here. And so it's hard to gain much elevation in flat terrain because you just can't go fall line, which means you can't exceed half of what the slope of the hillside is when you're doing trail construction. Otherwise you'll see a lot of erosion. But this was a big trench here, and so we kind of eased both ends down, built this up into a bench, and it's held up really nicely. Another area they thought for some reason they'd have a lot of issues, and I think we actually spread some native seeds in here that seem to have taken root in some spots. Again, it's really slow to get revegetation in these areas. Moisture, how slow and growing coastal sage is. Great views of Del Mar Country Club that don't often get. But trail kind of continues here, goes up in, and then you can kind of see the faint outline of it as it hooks that corner. And it's all pretty flat terrain through here, so again, can't go up or down that steep in flattish terrain or mellow terrain, but also it's kind of slowly growing in. One of the challenges with flat terrain too is like, how do you cut off the top? You don't want to cut off the top without going too, you don't want to go too deep because you don't want to make a trail a trench. So that's a challenge, and then you got to wait for everything kind of grow back in, but it seems to be doing its thing. To highlight another kind of cool little spot here. So originally the trail design actually called for the trail to go up back into that fill slope and then kind of come back out here where I'm standing. And after seeing kind of how unstable those fill slopes were and how some of them were breaking away, we replanned the trail. But there's actually some really deep canyons up here. I mean, really severe grades and areas where things have broken off. So, we kind of replanned that, and there's some weird little hooks that happen with the trail to avoid some of those really dramatic grade changes in these canyons. But again, overall, built with a pretty large machine, in comparison to handwork, and it's really closing up nice, narrowing up into a nice single track. So it just takes a little time sometimes. Probably the last part I'll point out here, this is a really nice section of the trail. Have some really smooth grade reversals, some really consistent terrain to be able to carve those in. And another area actually where there was a bit of a collapse. This is all basically all fill material brought in from both sides to kind of bring down a big cave-in. Went through the landscape here, and then trail drops down, kind of does a couple grade reversals. I have to avoid these brow ditches, and then we shoot back up at the end. And so this whole slope here was actually a cut slope, so they did mass grading back here, and so we had to kind of bounce the trail in between these brow ditches that run here. So there's one there, and then there's one you can't see above here, so we really had to stay between those and then be able to choose a spot to shoot out on the top of the road. So a lot of constraints. And then another fun fact, there were about 3 or 4 bees nests in really old irrigation boxes through here that just kept coming out every time we'd start up the machine and had to get removed. So this section took me 2 days and like a month. There was like a month of waiting for bees, and there was like 2 days of actual construction. So sometimes those things can maroon you, and because it's bees are getting rarer and rarer, everyone wants to humanely remove them. But I think in the future we'd probably just throw on a bee suit and get it done. So yeah, kind of fun facts, some history. Hey, so lastly, if you're looking to find this trail I've been talking about today, it's here at the end of Pacific Highlands Ranch Parkway. It's a little left-hand turn right here that takes you into the trail and takes you around. It's kind of an out and back, or you can go through the neighborhoods, and there's a way that dumps out onto Gonzalez Canyon. So right at the end of Pacific Highlands Ranch Parkway is a roundabout and a little service road. You can connect in with some pretty neat little loops into Gonzalez Canyon that take you over towards the coast, or just loop it, and then you can interconnect in with some other canyons, Black Mountain, even PQ, San Dieguito River Park if you're trying hard enough. So lots of options out here, and good little addition.